Wunderschönen guten Tag und herzlich willkommen bei Krautgaming. Mein Name ist Hendrik und wir haben uns mal gefragt, was passiert, wenn man die Rollenspielelemente aus Persona 4 nimmt, die Beat'em-up-Elemente aus BlazBlue nimmt, das Ganze in einen Mixer packt, ordentlich durchmixt und daraus dann ein neues Spiel macht. Wir haben eine Antwort gefunden, es ist nämlich Persona 4 Arena. Mehr Informationen zu diesem RPG Beat'em-up gibt es jetzt im Interview auf Krautgaming.
What genre is it? Good question. I think one of the sort of popular misconceptions really is that Persona Arena is a fighting game spin-off of Persona 4. But to be honest, it couldn't really be further from the truth. There's two very big sides to it. Obviously, the fighting game part is well documented and everybody knows about that. But there's two sides to it. There's a huge story mode. So you're looking at between 30 to 40 hours of story, and that's something that's been developed by Atlus. Obviously, we know their kind of skill in delivering a good story and delivering a good RPG, so Atlus have taken care of that sort of half of the game, you could say. And then the other half, you've got ArcSystemWorks, who are renowned sort of 2D fighting game specialist, and they've taken care of the kind of action sequences for the game. So it's a huge story, and it's an amazing fighting game simultaneously. So if you're a Persona 4 fan and you want to know more about how the characters in Persona 4 develop, then you'd be satisfied on that front. And if you're a big fighting game fan, then you'll obviously find a huge amount to enjoy there. So that's essentially how it sort of pans out.
So essentially, you've got two amazing developers, one amazing fighting game developer and one amazing storyteller, joining up and making this game. How did that come together?
How did that come together? Well, I think somebody once described it to me as being two very attractive parents jumping into bed together to make a beautiful baby, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. About 4 years ago, Atlus were looking at the popularity of Persona 4, and the characters in Persona 4 are so well loved, and the same with Persona 3 as well. Because of the kind of RPG that it is, people invest a lot of emotion into these characters, and so Atlus really wanted to kind of push that forward, but they didn't just want to make another RPG. And around that time, a lot of the staff at Atlus were playing a game called BlazBlue Calamity Trigger, and they were hugely impressed by the standard of the sprite work, the animation, but also the fact that ArcSystemWorks had created a fighting game, but had also managed to deliver a really compelling story, a really rich universe, and really great characters. So Atlus invited Toshimitsu Mori, the producer of BlazBlue, to a Persona Live concert in 2008, and that's kind of where the conversation began. They approached Arc and said, we really love and respect the work that you do. Is there a possibility that we could work together? And the answer was yes, and the result is Persona 4 Arena.
So with the Persona franchise in general, we're having a huge amount of storytelling and a huge amount of canon. How is that picked up? Because Persona 4 has a rather strict ending.
Yes, yes, it's true. I mean, it is canon. That's considering it to be a sort of a full-blown sequel, a full Persona experience, if you will, to Persona 4. So Persona 4 Arena picks up 2 months after the event of Persona 4. So you, the main character, comes back to Inaba, the town where Persona 4 is set. Obviously, he thinks the Midnight Channel has been shut down, but when he arrives in Inaba, he discovers that some of his friends have gone missing. Rise, Kenji, and Teddy are nowhere to be found. And he also hears a rumour that the Midnight Channel is back on air. So, as Persona fans will know, at midnight when it's raining outside, he turns on the TV, and he sees a commercial for something called the P1 Grand Prix, and which basically shows him and the kind of core group of school friends having to fight each other to the death, supposedly. Obviously, this is news to you, and it seems that Teddy has kind of turned evil and completely lost the plot. Now, the worrying thing for you is that he knows that anybody that turns up on the Midnight Channel when it's being watched is definitely going to be in some serious danger. So at that point, he kind of gets the investigation team from Persona 4 back together. They decide to enter the Midnight Channel again and try and figure out what happens. Obviously, I can't tell you any more than that, but that's kind of how the story kicks off and how it sort of integrates into the Persona 4 universe. One of the most interesting things about this story is, for the first time, you've got Persona 3 characters and Persona 4 characters coming together. So you've got Mitsuru, Aegis, Akiko, and Elizabeth as well, all coming together. And so a lot of the mystery around the game is, how did these Persona 3 characters kind of integrate with the Persona 4 characters? The other important thing is, you've noticed, Persona 3 fans will notice that they've changed in appearance quite a lot, because it's 2 years after Persona 3. So very early on, you find out exactly what's happened to these guys since you last saw them. There's going to be some really exciting revelations, which is why so much of the story has been kept under wraps for so long. So any kind of major Persona fans are going to get a real kick out of how those characters develop.
So with an RPG and a fighting game, you're bringing together two hardcore genres. What do you do to please the either new player to the game?
Yes, I think it's a good question, because you have, traditionally, so ArcSystemWorks are renowned for making sort of really deep fighting game systems. I think they're the probably best developers working around in terms of making those kind of hardcore 2D fighting games. And for fans of an RPG series, you kind of have to wonder, both developers are amazing, but they both make very different kinds of games. And I think one of the challenges for Arc and Atlus really was how to kind of please both parties. I think for Arc, I think one of the biggest challenges was to maintain the kind of quality and complexity that they're known for. But what they've done is they've put a lot of effort into making it much more accessible than the previous fighting games. So, for example, a lot of the more complicated inputs that you'd associate with a fighter, so dragon punch motions or 360-degree rotations for grapplers, or kind of half-circle motions, or some of the more kind of tricky motions for some of the supers, they've been kind of pushed out. So almost all of the special moves in the game are activated using like a standard fireball motion, or for supers a double fireball motion. So what it means is that you can concentrate really on the fun of fighting and the strategy of fighting, not I want to be able to do this move but I can't. That's kind of been removed. The other thing they've introduced is something called the auto combo system, which has been quite controversial, I think. But what the auto combo system allows for is, if you're a self-confessed button masher, you can stab away at one button and you can immediately get to grips with how the combo system works and deliver a combo and cancel it into a super, for example. But I think a lot of the kind of hardcore fighting game fans have been a little bit, I'm not really sure what to make of this system. But I think for the hardcore guys, you find that actually you just don't use that system. If you're totally new to a fighting game, you've never touched a fighting game before, it means you can jump in straight away, and it actually allows you to realistically compete with a good player. So in that sense, it caters for both audiences, total novices, and it really does cater for total novices. It's a great fun kind of game to sort of jump into. But if you're a hardcore player, all of those kinds of elements that you would expect from an ArcSystemWorks fighter are all in there. On the other side as well, of course, you have the story mode, and Atlus want to please Persona 4 fans particularly. So there's a huge amount of content in there. So you get to explore those relationships between the characters again. You get to see what they've been up to. You kind of get to see what the future holds for these guys. So if you're a Persona 4 fan, if you enjoyed the anime even and never played the RPG, you'll get a real kick out of being able to explore those guys again. And a lot of the humour as well, a lot of the dark humour that you associate with an Atlus RPG is all in there. And the quality of the dialogue, of course, is exceptional. But if you've never touched Persona 4, which I guess is the kind of the sort of fourth quarter of this sort of marriage, if you've never played Persona 4, if you've never watched the anime, it's quite self-explanatory. As you said, it ties up quite nicely at the end of Persona 4. So this really starts afresh. It will kind of bring you up to speed very early on in the story. So even if you're unfamiliar with the characters, you'll get a kick out of the story as well. So somehow these two very disparate developers and working in two very different genres have managed to combine something which is quite beautiful and quite easy to get into for all parties.
So in terms of story, the Persona core is really driven by this game. About how much more story are we talking about?
There's between 30 and 40 hours of story, so it's huge. In terms of localization, it's actually the biggest project that Atlus have ever undertaken in terms of dialogue and text. So it's a really weighty story. It's not just a fighting game. It's a full-blown Persona experience. So I hope very much that people are going to enjoy what they find in there.
So where is the targeted release?
Nothing to confirm at this time. Hopefully we'll be able to announce it soon, but we're always trying to release it as close to the US and Japan as possible. That's always our intention. So as soon as possible, basically, is the answer to that. But we should have an announcement very soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.